Well, a little bit of a later start today, but welcome back to Krown's Crypto Cave. It's a very bright and very hot, too hot day over here in Helsinki, Finland. As always, want to be wishing you well. The reason why I kind of waited to start this video actually is because I was hoping there'd be some new price action, but I do figure that there's a few other things that are a little bit newer as of today and relevant, most importantly, to today's daily total closure that are interesting. So I wanted to record this unformally though, as we don't have any new real price action, but can talk about the short-term timeframes. Of course, longer-term timeframes still more or less the same from the last week or so. Bitcoin's been in a closing range of only like $100, and most importantly, I want to know, what do the people who don't actually trade but who make videos on YouTube on YouTube about Bitcoin, what the fuck do they talk about during this time? Because Jesus Christ, man, this must be absolutely mind-numbingly boring. Anyways, on top of that, I will not be on Twitch today. I have a few errands to be running. Need to get a phone number here in Europe, and also I will be uploading to my gaming channel for anyone who's interested in Total War or just strategy games in general. The name of the channel is Total Krown over here on YouTube. I'll put a link in the comment section below if you happen to give a fuck. If not, all good. No harm, no foul. It's all good. But other than that, Elsa might be on Twitch today at Elsa69 if you want to check her on out. Check her out. Anyways, other than that, let's take a look at the Krown chain application. Here is what is very interesting about today. Remember the range that we've been speaking about on the open interest, talking about the 1.5 billion to 1.7 billion range. Well, look at where Bitcoin is, or not look at where Bitcoin, but look at where the open interest is in relationship to Bitcoin price action right now as we do start to get this day underway. And it's right at the precipice of that 1.7 billion marker, which I'm kind of looking at as a potential new indication of the new phase beginning. Now, I really want to see that alongside a break of the major range. In this case, it would be either 9,900 to the upside, as you know, as we've been looking at for the past few days, or about 9,500 to the downside. A breakage of one side of that range, plus a break of the range that we've been seeing on the open interest between about 1.7 and 1.5 billion would very much help confirm a new major change behavior that can lead on into a macro change behavior, perhaps, you know, another month or two down the road, as this game does typically move slowly. Anyways, looking at everything else, it's literally fucking unchanged, as you'd imagine, because Bitcoin price action has been mostly unchanged as well. But I would keep an intentful eye on that. What I really want to see is a break of the short-term range, both 9,900 to the upside, which actually is very interesting, and then 9,500 downside, maybe a little bit less interesting, but also a move outside of the range on the open interest. That's going to be the big key, I think, for today. And today's actually is very important, because when Bitcoin has these big, massive moves, typically comes after the culmination, after a long and uneventful consolidation period, of which I think that we're kind of getting to the end of right now. So let's go check out the actual price action charts right here. Let me just make sure that I'm recording. I am recording. The microphone's working. Perhaps this might even be a little bit of a shorter video as well. But looking at the 2-day and 3-day, we're actually going to see both of these timeframes close at the same time tonight as a daily total timeframe. Very, very important, as the 2-day and 3-day, which I consider kind of higher term timeframes for Bitcoin, that is. We can see that Bitcoin price action is still very constructive within this region right now. The 3-day looks to be setting in a potentially a higher low with any sort of a closure, especially above 97.50. It will confirm itself as a higher low. The 2-day already kind of there, and perhaps even pushing up to a higher high as well on a closing basis, anywhere above about 9,800-ish region. However, realistically, we're not going to see a change in behavior here until we actually take out this prior high right here, which is actually 10,000 bucks. I do think, though, we could be a little bit more aggressive on the lower term timeframes, or at least I could be more aggressive. This is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, and of course, I don't even trade my own opinion. So I only trade technical analysis. So, you know, keep that in mind. I don't want to like be spinning off of any sort of emotions here. But looking at the 2-day and 3-day, I really like what I see from a major moving average perspective, from a trend perspective, from a pattern perspective, from a momentum oscillator perspective, and historical volatility percentile perspective as well, suggesting that at the very least we are very, 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 very likely to have another spike up to test at the very least this trend line, probably within this next week. Certainly less than a week, actually like a few days maybe, as we are once again in the single digits for the past couple days, going off of that June 9th dildo. So that does suggest that anytime that we've gotten down into the single digit read, we're setting up for a pretty damn big move. Last time was late February, before this move from about 10,000 down to 4,400. Probably not always going to be that impressive, but equally as impressive, this move from 4,000 all the way to, I mean, 5,500, but realistically 14,000 soon after that. Time before that was back on over here, going from 6,000 to 3,000. So traditionally speaking, when we do see historical volatility percentile on the 2-day time frame get this low into the single digits, we see multi-thousands dollars worth of price action being spun upon that. So it is very much relevant to think that this next resolution is really going to be the next big phase in Bitcoin land. Although technically speaking, I still want to see price levels broken, not just 9,900 to the upside, but realistically 11.5 to the upside, or actually what's more interesting is actually to the downside below 8,700. Still talking about multiple $1,000s worth of worth of price action there. But realistically, right now, I do think that trend and everything else does favor the bulls right now. We'll look at probabilities a little bit later, but look at the 2-day Stokes. They actually are pointed down right now. Let's see what it would take to actually confirm them to the upside. Again, considering that tonight is going to be the closure for this time frame, and you need to close above 98.50. So this really does make me think that this next closure is very, very important, and it is kind of like a ticking time bomb, that in the sense that if Bitcoin fails to get continuation to the upside here, probably maybe even by tonight, but at most maybe by end of week, but even then it's kind of shaky. The more and more inherently bearish this will look. But for right now, ball is still in the bull's court, and I do think that if tonight's closure has anything to say about it, that would be a damn good opportunity to actually get that continuation to arrive. Anyways, as it stands right now from a major moving average perspective, of course, I have to remind myself, golden cross right in over here, 55 and 200, Bitcoin above all major moving averages, and more importantly, using them to base higher lows off of right now, the 10 simple being the most recent one, so all lower periods above higher periods, plus they all have positive slopes, plus anytime that we've seen a golden cross on the 2-day, generally good things, especially this one being a lot more efficacious as Bitcoin has already tested it once and twice, regaining a higher level moving average each and every time, by the way. And that, historically speaking, has been pretty damn good for Bitcoin. Just looking at the 200 simple, this white moving average on Bitcoin for the history of Bitcoin has been pretty damn good at getting the macro. Anytime that Bitcoin's above it and it has a positive slope, good. Anytime that it's below it and it has a negative slope, bad. You can back test it yourself and you'll see. Not going to get you like the full-on move or anything like that, but does get you the long-term momentum. More importantly, we also do see a lot of divergence now between the golden cross moving averages too, which I really do like, and the 21 cross and above the 200 simple, all good things in their own rights. Looking at the 3-day, 3-day never really got the same sort of crosses, but did get the 21 to the 55 right here, pretty damn good as well. Last time that we saw this brought Bitcoin from 9,000 to 10,500. Time before that was all the way from 5,000 to 14,000. Time before that was all the way from like 300 or 400 bucks to 20,000 and beyond, to infinity and beyond. And for right now, the 3-day is even more aggressive actually in its slopage. Looking at 3-day Stokes, they are actually technically down right now, but they actually will cross back up to the upside with tonight's daily total closure anywhere above 9,700, which is actually where the 10 simple is right now. So that is very interesting. So keep these numbers in mind as the daily total comes closer and closer to the end of the day. But for right now, obviously, a lot of trading hours left in the day, 14 hours and 55 minutes. That's a fucking eternity. And looking at the daily as well, we do see a very, very similar thing, showing 9,900 for momentum on Stokes to turn back up to the upside. So that's going to be very, 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 very important. And I do think that if we even just take out yesterday's high, just even take it out, like just trade above it, not even close above it during intraday action above 9,900, probably does get it as well. But I'm getting a little bit too aggressive here for my own tastes. Should remind myself that, we did have a decent sell signal on the daily Joule, but at the end of the day, I am not bearish on this, or at least I'm not looking for this to play out to the downside, or that Joule sell signal to play out to the downside unless we see a daily total closure below the 21 exponential average, which is actually above 9,500 now, or a wick below this spike low right here at about 93.50. If one of those two things happens, I would look for a quick move down at the very least to the 50, somewhere right around like 8,900-ish region to 9,000-ish region, probably bounce there along the 50. But as long as that condition's not met, I actually do think that more immediate pressure is onto the upside. And looking at historical volatility percentile on the daily as well, we're seeing a massive contraction phase here going all the way back to March of this year. So this is 3 months in the making essentially. March, April, May, June. Yeah, 3-4 months or something like that. And implying a big resolution probably for the macro range sometime in late July, maybe early August, somewhere right around here. But alongside that, we should see some spikes up to meet this trend line, which should be, if Bitcoin is going to work to the upside, should be constructive behavior. Looking at the 12-hour, what do we see here? We see 12-hour Stokes are actually up right now. Don't trade against the 12-hour Stokes. That's my one rule. No, just kidding. Of course, you're free to do whatever you want to do. And I've traded against it in the past before, and usually to my detriment, actually. Anyways, looking at 12-hour historical volatility percentile, very fucking low for multiple days now. This is set to spring. We're going to be looking at a very big move on Bitcoin, extremely likely. Historical volatility percentile is the absolute best way to be judging something like that. And again, for perspective, not just looking at the 2-day, but looking at the 12-hour as well. Last time that we were this low was back in September 2019. That was before Bitcoin went from, well, 10,000 down to 6,000, you know? And so that's going to very likely give Bitcoin enough momentum to break the big range, whether it be to the upside or the downside. And let's actually talk about the range right now. I did allude to it at the beginning of this video, but realistically, you know, it's unchanged, so that's why I'm not really too intent to talk about it. But the short-term range is very interesting, because to the upside, the short-term range breaking at 9,900, the bottom side of this blue box, or 10,000 if you're more conservative. I think both of them get it, to be fair, or even just taking out yesterday's high probably does it as well. Then I would be looking for extension to 10.5, and then because volatility is so low on those higher-term timeframes, I do think that 10.5 probably provides a short-term pullback, but very likely to see further continuation onto that 11.5 number, especially in line with this measure move from this ascending triangle right here, and a nice bullish reaccumulation formation, which would be pointed towards 11,000, just making a higher high above our last spike high in what was it, February, right here at about 10.5. Would very likely extrapolate another move towards 11.5, this liquid zone that we've seen spinning off all of this institutional order flow that's been selling off Bitcoin since January 2018 at 11,500. Also one of the gaps present on CME futures as well, coming in back from August 2019, still very much relevant. And from a volume profile perspective, well, you've already heard me talk about this a million goddamn times. So you can see a major change to behave above this area as well. So it would very likely lead on into the next major macro phase, where we can talk about just massively higher Bitcoin price action targets, where I start to sound like one of the fucking cheerleaders, and I really don't even like how that sounds. So fuck it. I'm bearish, baby. Fuck Bitcoin. This thing is going to goddamn zero, and go fuck yourself if you disagree. Just kidding. But basically, you know, above 11.5, you can see a major macro change of behavior. Target like 14,500 after that, 16,000, maybe even 20,000, but generally just be bullish unless if something drastically different were to happen, like coming back down below 10,000, we'll call it. But for right now, you know, from a weekly perspective, looks healthy as well. Constructive after the consolidation, after the 21 and 55 cross. Again, lower periods above higher periods, with the 10 simple following soon afterwards. I think that we already kind of got the backfill on last week's dildo at 94.50ish region, getting that wick down to about 95.50. Not perfect, so still could maybe come back down again, but overall, I'd still look at that as a nice pivot, naturally speaking. So going back down into these lower term timeframes, I just spoke a lot about the upside, which is you know, a lot more interesting right now, I think, for most people, but the downside is just as interesting as a trader. If Bitcoin does break back down below 9,500, and especially close a 4-hour dildo below there, I would, or even a 2-hour dildo below there, or even just takes out the wick low that we saw from a few days ago, which is about 9,400ish region, I would look for extension of the bottom side of the range, of which the bottom side of the range is these rising bottoms that we see at 10th of May and 24th of May, 25th of May right here. That would be coming in around the 236 fib as well, from a retracement from the last low to last high on this prior run. And I would look for a bounce there at the very least. And then if the bounce were to fail and actually break this level below, let's call it 88.50, or especially below 8,700, making a new lower low on higher term timeframes, then we can talk about much further south further south targets, of which I'd mark off the 382, another kind of basing region as well here, plus the last major breakdown that we saw from 10th of March. Probably does not bottom it though. I'd be looking for a bounce there and then sell it into the 0.5, somewhere down around 7,500. Also a very important area from a historical standpoint. This was a beautiful liquid zone breakout that we saw in early April, which is where I started to turn around bullish myself after being bearish this whole way through. And then I do think that one could actually bottom it. However, I think it'd be just as relevant to say that 6,900 probably does get tapped at the 618, and an equally as important historical area down here as well. So I like both of those areas if Bitcoin were to break to the south side. But for right now, keep in mind, you know, the measure move would actually be pointed down towards 7,500. So, you know, relevant to think that we could actually have a bottom there. But for right now, to be fair, it's well and far away. I mean, this is not a consideration for me at all until we at the very least break below 88.50, this rising support trend line for the ascending triangle. And and especially if we do break below the last prior low, 8,700. One of those two things would be very, very destructive for Bitcoin, at least for the medium and long term. Macro, we could talk about that if Bitcoin breaks below like 6,900. That would be devastating, probably coming back down to below 5,000 again if that were to happen. But for right now, Bitcoin's acting well and acting constructive, and it could very easily test this area right here, put in another higher low right here, and continue on the ascending triangle formation. I think that would be completely fine as well. So it's a game that's supporting resistance right now. I don't really care too much to be drawing like very ephemeral conclusions, because realistically for my own trading, it's rather simple. And it's I mean, you've been hearing me say more or less the same thing for the last week or so. Looking at short-term time frame momentum oscillators, we do see that 4-hour Stokes nosediving right now, and will continue to nosedive as long as Bitcoin price action is closing below about 9,800. So we're seeing a lot of these things align at the 98 to 9850-ish region. So that's very, very interesting. If Bitcoin can just close a 4-hour and subsequent 12-hour above that region, start to look very good for another upside break. But right now, pressure is down. 4-hour RSI is neutral here. It's neither bullish nor bearish. 4-hour Joule, however, is maybe lining up for a continuation holiday or long signal. That would actually be the one gleaming good thing on this. And then, of course, historical volatility percentile absolutely crushed as well. And when it's crushed, it's set to expand, my friends. And anytime that we've been that low in the single digits, we're talking about $500 to $1,000 plus move on the next big spike, of which last one was back here from 93 down to 87. Time before that was right here from 75 to 9. Time before that was from here from 73 to 66, 67. Time before that was this move over here, a pretty impressive move. So Bitcoin is very much wound up right now, and while no one's really paying attention, because it's it's boring as fuck, and I'd imagine that long-term traders aren't interested, short-term traders are starting to get bored. That's typically the time that we do see these pretty massive moves, whether it be to the upside or the downside, with the relevant levels marked off. I think that that's really all that it needs to be for myself, at least right now. 3-hour going to look more or less the same, although technically up right now on 3-hour Stokes. Interesting. They will remain to the upside as long as Bitcoin price action is above 97.50. So 97.50 is the key for short-term momentum, which can then lead on into medium and higher-term time frame momentum, as we saw earlier. Same thing on historical volatility. You don't need me to repeat that shit. I mean, Jesus Christ, it's so fucking contracted right there. Extremely likely we see resolution before the end of the week. I think even today is relatively likely. 2-hour Stokes turning down right now and will remain to the downside as long as we're below where? Of course, 98,100, right? 2-hour RSI is a little more on the bear side, but not conclusive in and of itself. Hourly showing downwards pressure as long as we're below 97.50 as well. And we do have a really nice orderly drop off right here, which does suggest a resolution point. Hey, where's my cursor? A little bit later today, actually. So this would be late in the day for me in the Eastern European time zone. So I do think it's actually very likely we see resolution today. Of course, I can be wrong in that, but and that's why I go off of levels rather than just like one singular tool. It needs to be combined with something. But for right now, things are lining up for a fun day. Maybe tomorrow at most, but if Bitcoin really fails to break to the upside in this next day, at most 2 days, I would not be bullish off that. Hesitation here is going to start to be interpreted as not good, even though we do still have constructive higher lows and it's looking good. It now needs to actually make a difference, especially considering that Nasdaq Futures making new all-time highs to the $10,000 level that we said was likely last month. And beyond, man. So if your asset is not rallying in this market right now, it's relatively weak. So when your major generals are rallying up like this, it allows everything else that is strong to rally with it. And if it's not rallying with it, it's considered relatively weak, and that's not good. Typically we'll be the last to rally, which is, also not necessarily the best sign. But to not rally at all or not to move with it is bifurcation, and that's usually the end of a phase, which is not good. But still, it's way too early to be, or it's not way too early. It's a little bit early to be calling it like that. I'd say like another week or so, and then it'd be very problematic. But for right now, still good. And traditional markets, just making new all-time highs. As I've been saying, there's really no reason to be bearish on this at all whatsoever, especially as long as it's above 97.50. If it does break below 97.50, I'd probably be looking for a move back down to 9100 base. And I do think in either late this month or maybe July, there will be a big move down, but it very likely will be the next big opportunity. And I think it'll likely be somewhere in the low 9,000s, somewhere like around 9,000 to 9,100 region, prospectively speaking. But like I said, I'm not even looking for a pullback on this until 97.50 is closed below on a daily. For right now, it's just melting to the upside, and it is looking a little bit frothy here, especially on those short-term time frames. So you probably do have a short-term pullback here, maybe back down to about 9,800. But overall, it's still just trendy, man. It's still just melting, really. E-mini futures are hitting our 323 target, I think, yesterday. Yes, it did. Oh, nice, right to the fucking T. Love it. And putting in what looks to be like a short-term top as well. So we probably do see a day of pullback today in traditional markets. If things get really crazy, I'd be looking for a move back down to 315 region, but I'd be looking for a nice bouncy bounce there, at least on the short-term time frames, and then come back. I think a lot of the easy moves have kind of been had for right now. I'd be looking for a pullback right now in traditional on the short term, and then judge it from there. But still, respect the trend as it is your friend and has been your friend for quite some time now. So yeah, what else do we want to look at? This video is probably gonna be, like I said, a little bit on the shorter side because really not too much new things to be speaking about. What else do we want to talk about? Do we have anything else here? Let's check out weekly RSI for CMEs, see if it's still kind of following. Yeah, so here's also the thing, and another reason why I do think that continuation really needs to be had by the bulls here sooner rather than later, and that is because if the weekly RSI on CMEs really starts to fail back down below and maybe even test this exponential, yes, it probably does bounce there, but coming back down a second time to base off of the breakout trend line is not good and not interpreted as strength at all whatsoever. So while I would look for a bounce there, that's probably like a bounce at like 87 or 8800 region. That would probably get sold into, and then we have a swing failure pattern, and this is going to look very bearish. But way too early to be calling it because this one closed on Friday, so another 2 days away. And realistically, I need to see it close above 10,250 in order to really be looking for immediate continuation into the bullish control zone, making a higher high above this 60 read right here, which, as you can see from from Bali's Bali and Pigs RSI tool, which is actually brilliant because I fucking love being able to plot at these levels and know exactly where price action needs to be. 10,255 on CMEs, which have about $100 premium on price action, would be needed to force that up, and that would actually look very, very good for a test into the low 70s, and then we'll talk about that when that happens. But for right now, this is all aligning with the fact that we do expect something to see, if bulls are going to take control, they take control sooner rather than later. It's not time to be pussyfooting around anymore. Hesitation for even another week or so is going to be interpreted not good. Butyrol, what's Butyrol looking like? Consolidating at a high level as well, still hanging those higher lows, but as you can see, yesterday's low at 238 spot 18 is a nice pivot now. So if that does get taken out to the downside, I would look for a move to the downside of the range. 231, probably small bounce there, and then this starts to look a lot toppy as well. This actually looks a lot like distribution as it is right now. However, I'd put the focus on Bitcoin just because Bitcoin does seem to take the pole position. Other than that, yeah, like I said, this video is going to be short, man. Gold rallying back up, so I was wrong about the pullback in gold. Yeah, actually, I'm going to be massively wrong about this one. This one's probably popping back up to 1740-ish region. Got the nice backfill on the weekly and up. Interesting. I'd kind of steer clear of gold right now. Long term, I'm still bullish on it. Short term, I don't know. I want to say a healthy amount of I don't know here, but the only way that the obvious thing that I can say, and you already fucking know this, man. I'm not saying anything out of left field here, but if we take out last month's high, yes, continuation at 18 plus, but it's just not helpful right now. It's too frothy for me as a trader to really be interested in it. It's really all eyes on Bitcoin right now. This one's gonna have the chance, I do think. So with that said, let's go take a look at probabilities, and then we'll wrap this bitch up. By the way, as far as the daily goes on the momentum oscillator for Bali and Pigs tools right here, it's actually turned back up to the upside. So it's going to have a chance here. I do think that if bulls are going to pull through, they pull through like today. I shouldn't say that. I really should not say that. That's not appropriate for me to say, and it's also not what I believe as a trader. You can't just make those assumptions. But what we can say is that using the same ranges that we've been using, 9,900 to the upside, we could even use 9,550 to the downside now. Although I'll keep it at 9,500 just to be a little more conservative. You know, the probabilities for this on the next daily closure, which is also going to be the 2-day closure and the 3-day closure, is showing 39% to the upside, versus 27 spot, 46% to the downside below 9,500. Now, keep in mind, 9,500 is not relevant to the high term timeframes, but it's relevant for like another $500, $600 move to the downside of the range, which could then incur more. But I still don't want to get ahead of ourselves here. 9,900 to the upside, that really does start to call into, or that really does make me want to target, prospectively target the measured move from the ascending triangle right here, which is pointing towards 11,000. Like I said, that would make a higher high above our 10.5 high right here. And any sort of a daily close above that high at about 10.4, or a weekly close above it at 10.2, or even a wick above the prior wick at 10.5 would all be good enough for me to look for a move up for the next major area, which we already spoke about, is 11.5. And you can do the same thing on volume profile here as well. You can see that 10.5 is a nice pivot coming in from this last higher value node. Relatively speaking, obviously this is not a high value node in the context of the last few years, but in relationship to what we're looking at right now, it certainly is, and a move above there, and very, very likely we do get sucked up into this region right here. That's where the next macro battle gets to be fought in, I suppose. But for right now, Bitcoin's making everyone wait and being relatively boring, and I think it's winding up for a pretty damn big move. But until we actually break one side of this range, plus that open interest read over here getting changed above, let's call it like 1.7.5 billion would probably be better. Just be a little bit, err a little bit more on the side of caution. I'd still be just looking at the fucking range of death and decay here to play out a little bit more. By the way, 200 simple is starting to take a little bit of a downward slope there. I don't like that. But for what it's worth right now, horizontal still going to be the area that I'd be managing off of. If you want to be more aggressive, you could probably use 9,550. I'm not going to be using that myself. However, if 9,500 does get broken to the downside, I'd look for a quick move down here. Actually, 88 to 8,900 region, probably bounce there. Then we'll come back and reassess. By the same token, a move above yesterday's high at 9,900, or a 4-hour closure above 9,900. Kind of obviously the first one's going to be a lot easier to do. A closure is going to be a lot better overall for inducing confidence and putting on more risk for myself. But a move above there, and well, we already spoke about those upwards targets. So I think I'll leave it off there. Keep this video nice and short and sweet. I want to wish you well once again. Take care, and until next time.